A 77-year-old woman in Ohio just lost her home. Not to a scam, not to a crooked contractor, not to a bad investment. She lost it because her daughter tried to protect it. The daughter did exactly what thousands of American families do every year. She transferred her mother's house into her own name to protect it from Medicaid. She paid a lawyer $300 to draw up the paperwork. She thought the problem was solved. 18 months later, Medicaid sent a letter. The transfer had triggered a 965-day penalty period. For 2 years and 7 months, Medicaid would not pay a single dollar toward her mother's nursing home care. At $9,000 a month, the family owed $229,000 before benefits would begin. The house they transferred to protect from Medicaid had to be sold to pay the bill that Medicaid refused to cover. This happens every week in America. Not because families are careless, because they were given advice that sounds completely logical and is completely wrong. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to show you exactly why transferring a house to your children is one of the most expensive Medicaid mistakes a family can make, what it actually costs when it goes wrong, and the legal alternative that accomplishes everything the transfer is trying to do, without triggering a single day of penalty. If someone in your family has already done this, stay with me. The options available to you depend entirely on timing, and some of them close faster than you think. Take a woman named Linda. She is 77 years old. She owns a 3-bedroom home in suburban Ohio that she and her late husband bought in 1989 for $112,000. By 2023, that home was worth $287,000. It is paid off. It is her primary asset. Linda has 2 daughters. Her older daughter, Patricia, is 52, lives locally, and handles most of Linda's affairs. Her younger daughter, Susan, lives in Denver and calls every Sunday. In the spring of 2023, Linda attended a retirement planning seminar at her local library. The presenter, not an attorney, not a financial advisor, a person selling insurance products, mentioned that putting a home in children's names was a strategy some families use to protect it from nursing home costs. Linda mentioned this to Patricia. Patricia mentioned it to her husband, who mentioned it to a colleague who said his own parents had done the same thing. Patricia researched it briefly online, found some articles that described it as a common approach, and arranged for a general practice attorney to draft a deed transferring Linda's home to herself and Susan equally. The deed was signed in June 2023. The recording fee was $47. Patricia and Susan each now owned half of their mother's home. Linda felt relieved. Patricia felt responsible. Nobody involved, not Linda, not Patricia, not the attorney who drafted the deed, understood what they had just done. In October 2024, Linda fell in her kitchen. She fractured her hip. She was hospitalized, then transferred to a rehabilitation facility. Her recovery was slower than expected. By January 2025, it was clear that Linda could not safely return home alone. Her family began the Medicaid application process to cover the cost of a long-term care facility. The Medicaid caseworker requested 5 years of financial records. Patricia gathered the documents. Among them, the deed transfer from June 2023, 18 months earlier, transferring Linda's home, valued at $287,000, to Patricia and Susan for $0. $0 because it was a gift. The caseworker applied Ohio's Medicaid lookback rules. The transfer of a $287,000 asset for zero consideration within the 60-month lookback period created a penalty period. Ohio's average daily nursing home rate is $297 per day. The penalty calculation, $287,000 divided by $297 equals 965 days of ineligibility. 965 days. That is 2 years, 7 months, and 20 days, during which Ohio Medicaid would not pay a single dollar toward Linda's nursing home care. At $8,900 per month, Linda's family was responsible for approximately $229,000 in nursing home costs before Medicaid benefits could begin. The house they transferred to protect from Medicaid would now have to be sold to pay the nursing home bill that Medicaid refused to cover. Linda did not protect her home. She created a penalty that forced the sale of her home. Patricia did not protect her mother. She triggered a 2.5-year Medicaid disqualification trying to help her. And the attorney who drafted the deed, the general practice attorney who charged a modest fee to transfer the property, did not specialize in elder law, did not ask about Linda's health status, did not analyze the look-back consequences, and did not explain that what felt like protection was actually a transfer that Medicaid would treat as an attempt to hide assets. What felt like protection was actually a transfer that Medicaid would treat as an attempt to hide assets. Sounds logical, but ignores the specific mechanics of how Medicaid actually works. Let me explain those mechanics precisely. The Medicaid 5-year lookback is a rule that requires anyone applying for Medicaid long-term care benefits to disclose every financial transaction made in the previous 60 months. Any transfer of assets for less than fair market value during that period, any gift, any below-market sale, any transfer to a child for zero consideration, is treated as a disqualifying transfer. The program calculates a penalty period by dividing the total value of disqualifying transfers by the average monthly or daily nursing home cost in your state. Critically, the penalty period does not begin when the transfer is made. It begins when the person is otherwise eligible for Medicaid, meaning they are already in a nursing facility, already out of money, already depending on the program to pay their bills. This is the mechanism that makes transferring a house to children so dangerous. The transfer happens when the parent is healthy. The penalty activates when the parent is sick, in a facility, and out of money. The family is then responsible for nursing home costs during the full penalty period, costs that can reach 6 figures, with no Medicaid coverage and often no assets remaining to pay them. The house that was transferred to protect is typically the asset that has to be sold to cover the penalty. Now let me explain why. People believe this strategy works because the logic behind it is not entirely wrong. The problem is not the goal. The goal is correct. Keep the home out of Medicaid's reach. The problem is the method. When a parent transfers a home to children outright, 3 things happen simultaneously. First, the transfer starts the 5-year look-back clock. If the parent does not need nursing home care within the next 5 years, the transfer is outside the look-back window and Medicaid cannot count it as a disqualifying transfer. In this scenario, and only this scenario, the strategy technically works, but it requires the parent to remain healthy enough not to need nursing home care for 5 consecutive years from the date of transfer. For a 77-year-old woman who attends retirement seminars about asset protection, that is a bet that often does not pay off. Second, the parent loses control of the property immediately and completely. Once the home is transferred to the children, the parent no longer owns it, they cannot sell it, they cannot mortgage it, they cannot refinance it, they cannot change their mind without the children's consent. If the relationship with a child deteriorates, if a child divorces, faces bankruptcy, has creditors, or simply disagrees about what to do with the property, the parent's home is at risk from circumstances entirely outside the parent's control. Third, the children inherit a capital gains tax problem. When a parent transfers a home during their lifetime, the children receive the parent's original cost basis, in Linda's case, $112,000 paid in 1989. If they later sell the home for its current value of $287,000, the taxable gain is $175,000. If the parent had retained ownership until death and the children had inherited the home, they would have received a stepped-up basis at the date of death, meaning the taxable gain on a subsequent sale would be 0 or minimal. The lifetime transfer that was intended to save the home from Medicaid instead cost the children a significant capital gains tax bill. The strategy fails on 3 separate fronts simultaneously: Medicaid, control, and taxes. So what is the correct approach? The tool that achieves what the house transfer is trying to achieve, without the look-back penalty, without the loss of control, and without the capital gains tax problem, is called the Ladybird Deed. The formal legal name is an enhanced life estate deed. We covered this in depth in our first video, which I will link in the description below. But here is how it compares directly to the outright transfer. With an outright transfer, the parent signs the home to the children now. The parent loses control. The look-back clock starts. The capital gains basis is locked in at the original purchase price. With a Ladybird Deed, the parent retains complete ownership and control of the home for life. They can sell it, mortgage it, change the beneficiaries, or revoke the deed entirely without the children's consent. At the parent's death, the home passes directly to the named beneficiaries outside of probate. Because it passes outside probate, Medicaid's estate recovery program cannot reach it in the states that recognize this deed, and because the children receive the property at death rather than during the parent's lifetime, they receive a stepped-up cost basis, eliminating the capital gains tax problem entirely. The Ladybird deed accomplishes everything the outright transfer is trying to accomplish. It does not trigger the lookback penalty. It does not strip the parent of control. It does not create a capital gains liability for the children. And it costs between $250 and $500 to prepare with a qualified elder law attorney. The comparison is not subtle. Outright transfer, no cost to execute, triggers a potential 900-day Medicaid penalty worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in nursing home costs, removes the parent's control, creates a capital gains liability for the children. Ladybird deed, $250 to $500, no look-back penalty, parent retains full control, children receive stepped-up basis at death. Same goal, completely different outcome. Now let me address the 3 situations I hear about most frequently because the timing of when someone learns about this matters enormously. Situation 1. The transfer happened more than 5 years ago. If a parent transferred their home to a child more than 5 years before applying for Medicaid, the transfer is outside the look-back window. Medicaid cannot count it as a disqualifying transfer. The strategy in this specific scenario has technically worked. However, the parent still has no control of the property. The capital gains tax issue still exists. And if the relationship with the child is anything other than perfectly aligned, the parent's most valuable asset is in someone else's hands. Situation 2. The transfer happened within the last 5 years. This is Linda's situation. The look-back window is open. The transfer is a disqualifying event. The penalty period is calculated from the value of the home. The family faces a choice. Reverse the transfer by having the children deed the property back to the parent, which may or may not fully cure the problem depending on the state and the timing, or accept the penalty period and plan around it as best as possible with an elder law attorney. If you are in this situation, call an elder law attorney today, not next week. Today, the options available to you narrow with every month that passes. Situation 3. The transfer has not yet happened. Someone in your family has suggested it. A parent is considering it. An attorney has been mentioned. Do not do it. Instead, search for a qualified elder law attorney in your state, specifically an elder law attorney, not a general practice attorney, and ask them about the Ladybird deed or its equivalent in your state as an alternative. The conversation will take 1 hour. The cost will be between $200 and $400 for the consultation. The protection it provides, the home kept in the parent's name and control, passing outside probate at death, protected from estate recovery in the states that recognize the instrument, is worth precisely the value of the home. Let me bring this back to Linda. Linda is in a nursing facility in Ohio. Her family is navigating a Medicaid penalty period that will cost them approximately $229,000 before benefits begin. They are exploring every legal option available. The attorney they hired after the penalty notice arrived is doing everything possible to mitigate the damage. But the damage is real, and it was entirely preventable. The deed transfer cost $47 to record. The attorney who drafted it charged a flat fee for a simple deed transfer. Nobody in the process, not the insurance seminar presenter, not the online articles Patricia found, not the general practice attorney who drafted the document, explained what the Medicaid program would do with it 18 months later. That information existed. It was sitting in elder law offices across Ohio. It was in the planning guides published by the Ohio State Bar Association's elder law section. It was in the Medicaid manuals maintained by the Ohio Department of Medicaid. It was simply never explained to Linda. And that is what this channel exists to fix. Never put your house in your child's name to protect it from Medicaid. Not because the goal is wrong, because the method fails on Medicaid, on control, and on taxes every time. The right tool is the Ladybird deed. It costs $250 to $500. It works, and it is available in the states that matter most. The video explaining exactly how it works, which states recognize it, and the 3 execution mistakes that cause it to fail, that is video 1 on this channel. Watch it next. Share it with every adult child in your family who has a parent who owns a home. Stay sharp, stay protected, and stay one step ahead of the system that is counting on you not to.